pilots will taxi the airplane out on the runway and line it up straight, and then we'll tell the flight engineer to set the manifold pressure to 30, which is 30 inches of mercury. And that gets the engines into sort of a mid-range, good power setting. And then pilots will release the brakes, the airplane will start rolling down the runway. The only way to keep the airplane going straight would be to use differential power to keep it going straight, or to use brakes. Well, you don't want to use brakes while you're trying to accelerate. So the only way really to keep going straight is to use differential power. And as the airplane accelerates, usually in about the first 1,000 feet, you'll be at 60 miles an hour. The rudder becomes effective. Then the pilots will tell the flight engineer to set the maximum power. Then about another 1,500 feet down the runway, you're now about 100 miles an hour. You're able to release or pull back just a little bit on the yoke. You don't pull it off the ground, you sort of just set the nose in a nose-high attitude. When the plane's ready to fly, 120, 125, the plane just sort of lifts off. Once you're assured that you're off the ground, you're not going to need to come right back to the ground. Pilots apply the brakes to keep the tires from spinning, bring the gear up, and as we accelerate out, you will retard the power from max power to what we call climb 1, which is an intermediate power setting. It takes a little bit of power off the engine, but it keeps the engines from max power. Then we usually bring the flaps up, then we'll go to a climb power, which we call climb 2, 2,000 RPMs, 30 on the manifold pressure. Keeps us climbing at about 180, 190, and then we climb on straight on out. It's like driving a pickup truck on a gravel road a little too fast. It just sort of wallows a little bit, and it takes big controls to get it to turn. Once the B-29 gets up to 170 miles an hour, it tends to get up on a little step. It's a lot more responsive. It will do steep turns at 200 miles an hour and just make a nice, easy, just 60-degree bank, just turn right around on itself. It's a big lumbering airplane, but it's still a pretty amazing feat. It's really cool to fly really low, but if you're flying really low, the little kid in the back can't see you. So a lot of times I like to be at 200 or 300 feet, puts us close to the ground, gives us that effect. You see the speed of the airplane. On the fly through, we might be at 250, 270, and then you sort of pulled up and go down to about 200 or 180, make the turn and go out. So you're using a little bit of altitude to pick up some speed, and then give up a little bit of speed to pick up some altitude on the way out. When you're going fast, the plane is very responsive, but as you get slower, when you look at the airplane, the aileron's like a third of the wingspan out there. You can turn the yoke about 3/4 of the way around to get full deflection. When you're flying and you have airflow over it, you don't need to do that. But nice and slow, or coming in on final at 120 miles an hour, you'll be working the yoke 45 degrees to 45 degrees back and forth in that. There is a lot of work, especially trying to get it to come around the corner. If you don't, you end up sliding through the corner and all those type of things. So yeah, you work the rudders, you work the ailerons. You got to lead it. Before you want to level off, you need to start rolling the yoke the opposite direction to get it to think about turning back. It's the way Boeing is. 135 is the same way. You watch a B-52 the same way. You sort of almost have to guess how much input do I need, because a second from now is when it's actually going to move. One striking feature of the airplane is the tail, how big it is. But you need that. The worst thing that can happen to you is for an outboard engine to fail. And you have to be able to counteract that loss of thrust, because you think about it, with two engines on one wing and only one engine on the other, if you don't do anything, the two engines are going to overpower you and push the airplane one way. So the rudder is your way to try and turn the airplane back into the good engine. Sometimes there's pyrotechnics on the ground. They're blowing up the bags of gasoline is really what it is, or diesel, and they blow that up. But you know, it gives a great effect from the ground. You know, watch the airplane fly by and then a big boom underneath it and that.